lies in the Vaseline. We are. Sometimes it blows my mind. And from the intro, there's also the quote, what is real and what's for sale by the great Scott Whelan. And Scott Whelan, I would say, was influenced by the individual we are talking today. I know Scott Whelan always said, hey, it's Jim Morrison. It's like, come on, look at you, man. Look at your lyrics. Look at the whole grunge movement. But anyway, welcome to GenX Wasteland. You're watching on my private channel and on the Aeon By channel, available for everybody live. Still all of us stuck in the Vaseline, but we will find ways to free us today, especially with the topic, one of my favorite topics. You guys know I could talk about Elvis and David Bowie all day long, and of course that always inevitably leads to Gnosticism. And yep, my name is Miguel Connor, and I am your host in whatever channel or podcast you are listening to. And today I am very excited to be joined by an individual who was really one of the inspirations, or really the help, to get my David Bowie book, which will be out later this year, The Gnostic David Bowie. His blog was just incredible, and his new book, which just came out 10 years after the Starman left us, we will be discussing today. And man, oh man, it was a great read. And the book is David Bowie and the Search for Life, Death, and God. And that is from our guest today, Peter Ormerod. Peter, thank you very much for coming on the show.
Thank you so much for having me. You've been a great inspiration for me as well. You've really helped me along this path. So it's a pleasure to be here.
Oh God, I'm so happy. Yeah, because again, we'll unpack this. But with us too, it's always great to have my wing thing, or wing it, and that is Dr. Sherilyn Jones. Sherilyn, how are you doing?
I'm doing really well. We're nice and warm here in Montana, comparatively speaking. So hope everybody else is hanging in there, and really looking forward to hearing a new perspective on Bowie. Having read a few biographies of people I really enjoy, it's so interesting to me, the different perspectives you get from each person's biography. So I'm really looking forward to this, Peter. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, well, we're still cold here. God, 2 days ago, our heater went out, and man, that is a humbling experience, especially when it's, 0 degrees out there. But such is life. Well, it's January. What do you want to do? What do you want to do? So that's what Sherilyn said is interesting, Peter, because it seems David Bowie, it truly is so multifaceted that we can approach him different ways, and they're all right. I mean, for example, your book takes his quest for his metaphysical understanding and experience of God. My take takes on a Gnostic approach, but then you can look at the Tao of David Bowie. You can look at Dylan Jones when Ziggy played guitar, which goes into the whole astronaut 70s trope, science fiction. They're all different, but they're all right. So is that what David Bowie does to us?
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's been my experience. I think of him sometimes like a mirror ball. You can shine a light on him, and it just bounces all over the room, all over the world. And each speck of light is reflected off him, but it has a distinctive sort of character to it. And so you can indeed have so many books about him. There's another book that's just come out about him over here as well, and over there, I think, which is done well as well. And that's that focuses on the second half of his career, for example. And that's a whole story you can tell as a lengthy book. And there's mine, and there are just so many stories that spin off this guy, and it's incredible. They're just the one man, but so much comes out of him, and it's a remarkable thing to on my part, just to delve into one aspect of that, even though I think it's a really important fundamental, and I appreciate there are plenty of other stories to tell as well.
Yeah, well, second half of his career. Who would wanna start writing a book with "Let's Dance"? That's grim. No, but of course, as you write and I write, that's probably his theological, metaphysical life was always just rich throughout the
Mm.
decades. In fact, it got more mature, more robust, even more humble and more clear. And yeah, like you said, there's a famous quote by Albert Schweitzer, who wrote The Quest for the Historical Jesus. And he said, the Jesus you're looking for is the Jesus you'll find. You can say that with Elvis. There's a million ways to approach Elvis, you know? He was a hero. He was a conservative Christian. He was a drug addict. He was a savior. He destroyed American culture. So there are figures like Elvis and Jesus and David Bowie who take that, like you said, what we're looking for, what we'll find in our lives. And when did you find out? When did the Starman enter your life?
So I had been dimly aware of him in my childhood. I born in 1979. I grew up in the sort of in the 80s, and so I was dimly aware of things like Labyrinth. I actually liked Labyrinth when I was about 9
Yeah,
years
we all
old.
do.
We all did, of course. And there were a few little songs I knew and I picked up along the way, but it wasn't until 1996, getting on for 30 years ago, April 1996 it was, when I borrowed my brother's tape of Hunky Dory,
Mm.
the Bowie album, and that just changed it, just as if a light went on in my head or in my wherever in my soul or whatever, and nothing was the same really after that. It was incredible that it was as close as I've had to a conversion experience, I think. Um, it was a question, and I've often wondered why that was, why it had that effect on me. Some of it was that certainly the music, which I found really beautiful and moving, but a lot of it, I think, was the fact I picked up certain words that he was saying. There's a song on, you all know the song Quicksand, of course,
Of course.
um, where it talks about faith, and he talks about things, these strange things that I didn't know what they were, but still sounded fascinating. You get the Golden Dawn on there, you get Crowley's uniform of imagery, and all that sort of stuff. And and all of that sort of fascinated me. It was a mystery to me, and I wanted to find out more about it. Um, and so, yeah, that was kind of where it really began for me in a big way.
Yeah, I like how you write in your book about Hunky Dory. It was, quote, beguiling and bullshit. And that's so much, that's David Bowie right there. It's again, this duality about him is going back to Jesus. There's a famous quote how the word profane, hold the sacred and the profane is the same word in Latin. And so Jesus is this sort of both figure, and David is, yeah, he's beguiling and he's full of bullshit. And he was full of bullshit. He's the most unreliable witness, isn't he? He admit, I lie all the time, and this is the one time I'll tell you the truth. And he stole from people. His famous quote, "Well, it's not stealing if I make it better." He was terrible, but he was, yeah, a trickster who just sort of self mythologized in real time.
Absolutely, I go into that a bit in the book as well. I talk about him as a magician,
Mhm.
but there are three, as I say in the book. I sort of identify three kinds of magician that he could potentially be. There's the sort of the entertaining trickster sort of guy who you might see. Hi, Liam. That's nice to
Yeah,
see you.
yeah, synchronicities
Fantastic.
abound.
Um, yeah, so there's the entertaining trickster who he's tricking you. He knows he's tricking you, and it's just entertainment. And Bowie was that. But there are also magicians you get who are slightly weirder, who occupy a slightly different role, where they're not tuxedoed entertainers in the same way, but they do sort of do magic tricks, but they do them in a way where you're left thinking, oh, could that be real? So sort of some mentalists, or some people like David Blaine
Lame.
or Uri Geller, you might say as well. Some might say. And Bowie was like that as well. He was this sort of alien, otherworldly figure, and even though you sort of had a handle on him, he had this enigma about him as well. At times, if he wanted to have an enigma about him, he could generate that. And there's the third kind, which is which you might call the sort of the real magician, I suppose, the one who engages in magical practices or rituals or conjures things spiritually in a more you might call real way, and there was that sense that Bowie was sort of in that realm at times as well, and he played with all of those and sort of danced from one of those characters to another with this sort of beguiling energy. So there is that sort of deception about him, but are you being deceitful if you're being honest about your deception? And and every rock star's a deceiver, right? It just depends on how honest you want to be about that, how upfront you want to be about the artifice that you're creating.
Yeah, well said. Hermes is the god of the mind, but he's the god of the tricks. And Philip K. Dick famously said, if you know you're insane, do you stop being insane? So obviously, Bowie, David, he hates it when I call him Bowie. I have to call him David. You're always playing this game with reality, with yourself and so forth. And so the thesis of your book, Peter, is basically, and it's the same as I write in my Elvis book, Elvis being an entertainer was really secondary to his quest for God. That was the big question. Why am I here? Why do these things happen? What's on the other side? What happens when I die? What's the structure? And you would say too, that was really what a huge drive for the figure for David Jones, if you would.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there were other. I'm not going to pretend that it was this completely sort of pious urge he had. There were other things involved always. There was sex involved, and there was money involved. All of those things, of course. But you can trace very closely his spiritual interests and how they varied over time onto his music, and there's it just seems to be. We talk about Bowie, people talk about him going through his changes and all that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But there is a real thread that runs through it, and once you follow it through the spiritual adventurism, then it actually makes a lot of sense. It really does. So whether it's from the Buddhism early on through to the more occultism. Through to his interest in messiahs, or through to Kabbalah, and on from that into a more existential sort of theology, you can call it, or spirituality. It absolutely undergirds and powers so much of what he did. And his best stuff, I think, is when he's most closely connected with that.
Yeah, he even said when doing his drug haze, he was still looking for God. He's just, and Jung said it himself. When an alcoholic takes a drink, he's kind of looking for God. He's trying to get out of normative time and their ego. Kierkegaard is a very important figure in your book. They're trying to make that leap of faith, but we crash when we do that, right, David? We crash into drugs, broken relationships, mistakes.
Absolutely, it comes at a cost, this search. I mean, it does for a lot of people, and then you wonder, is it worth it, or what am I looking for? One of the amazing things with David is that he never really gave up on it, which is extraordinary. But that there were times when he was flirting with atheism, but he could never quite go there, never quite be 100% atheist, and his work, even and his last works, which even when he stopped giving interviews or stopped, people had to make up their own mind about what his work was about, but it was so obviously, to me, suffused with the same spiritual either statements or spiritual longing or searching.
It was indeed. Dr. Jones, do you have a question, or what do you think?
Well, just to kind of echo what Peter was saying about my introduction to Bowie as a child. I'm a few years older than you, Peter, but close. And So we got the 2.0 or the 3.0 or whatever point oh we got of Bowie in the early 80s. And I just remember, much like I had discussed recently with Chris Knowles about my introduction to Jung through the Police's Synchronicity, I heard these words that I wasn't hearing in other places. And I remember listening to the song Modern Love and going, oh, wait, people aren't happy that are married, and people, I knew that, but I mean that this whole image, the church, the religion, these fake relations, it's all fake, and it makes me sick. I thought, oh my goodness, that was really revolutionary to me to hear that, on the radio, right? There was a few radio stations back then. So it was a really subversive, challenging message that made one of those pieces of my puzzle that made me start questioning what I was seeing in my life. And I wonder, these figures like Elvis and Bowie, these great tricksters that, I mean, you all have researched them, right? And I don't know if either one of you have found that, I don't think you have, but it seems now that so many of the mass media stars that are put up before us are what Alex Haley, who wrote Roots, would call turtles on a fence post. If you see a turtle on a fence post, somebody put it there, right? They're put up. It's not
Right,
organic.
right.
They don't have real talent. They came out of nowhere. And for somebody who's worked in music and watching what bands struggle through to get, years and years ago, right? What they would have to go through to gain any sort of following or recognition. And then now we just see poof, people appear and they don't have any talent. They're using these, digitized soundtracks. And so it seems that these were two, and I don't know who you all would put up as the last great trickster, but it almost seems like these were our two kind of last great organic tricksters that were put up for us to, not that they were put up, that they organically emerged. And I wonder where that goes. Where does that go? Does that mean now we have to internalize that into ourselves? Because I feel like anybody who grew up seeing an Elvis or a Bowie, when they see these turtles on fence posts, they go, there's no resonance, right? So that trickster energy has to go somewhere. Hopefully we can incorporate it back into ourselves, but I'm not sure how much that's happening. But yeah, your thoughts on, I mean, I don't know. Have you seen that his rise and his work was pretty organic? Were there miracles along the way that say anything to counter that?
First, can I thank you for mentioning Modern Love, because so
Yeah.
many people don't hear what you heard in it or hear what I heard in it, and they just hear this really bouncy, upbeat pop song that everyone can dance along
But as
to.
you read, and I
So
agree, it's his most Gnostic song. It's a
yeah,
very Gnostic
thank
song.
you.
It's
I'm really
so dark. It's so
isn't it?
disturbing.
Isn't it? I know. Thank you so much, because yeah, that was a song I was writing, and I was thinking, I really hope, really hope I can get this across. So I'm so glad that you already felt like that. I think there's something in terms of the organic nature of it. I mean, a lot of people have said that Bowie wasn't as organic as other artists. There's always been that sort of fakery thing. And he called himself the faker, he called himself the actor. And he said that he was, trying it on a lot of the time. I suppose, as I was saying though, a difference is the upfrontness about that, and it's a bit like Brechtian theatre, whatever, where you expose the artifice to get to a deeper truth. He obviously had managers, although he wasn't, he didn't get on with them so well, certainly after the first couple. And he had luck along the way, you could say. Whether there's a lot of, I think there's a lot of what you might call synchronicity along the way with him, certainly. But yeah, I think there's how something I also think though with him, people sometimes say style over substance, but I think it's so easy to overlook the depth of the substance with Bowie, because the style is so powerful, because the image is so strong. You can forget just how good the songwriting is a lot of the time, or how brilliant the ideas were. So in that way, there is a I think an organic aspect to him that gets really overlooked, actually. So yeah, interested in what Miguel thinks on this.
God, this is such a good question. I would say it was faded, but same with Elvis, but not in a good way. It's like he had no choice. I think the thing I see about David is that he was. I talk about the wounded healer trope in both books, but he was broken, and then I mean, not just brutally broken. He was a broken person who was almost the cracks were bringing the light in, as Leonard Cohen famously said, because again, abused by his mother, insanity in his family, losing his beloved Terry, his brother. Post-war England, they try to hide it, but it was a dystopia. It was like Mississippi in the Great Depression, or it was, and being abused at school. His teacher would hit him because he was left-handed. He was so broken, and I think he was in a lot of pain. He admitted even in the late 80s when 100 million in the bank conquered the world, and he's like, I am miserable every day I wake up. And I think things got better when he sobered up and got married. But wouldn't you agree, Peter? I think him being a wounded healer and broken, faded, was really part of what made his quest.
Massively, yeah, I think so. I think he was always, certainly early on in his career, and he could maybe scan it on to well into his career. The idea of escape was really important to him.
Mm-hmm.
Which, from a Gnostic point of view, is probably significant as well. It's a really absolutely wanting to get away from where he was, either physically or emotionally, or however, or spiritually, or however you might want to say that. Right up to the last play, right up to his play Lazarus, his musical play, where it's kind of about. It's about finding rest, but it began as being about escape as well, and that was right up until into his 60s. He was still having these sort of these feelings, or these kind of drives. So yeah, completely. I think that's quite right.
Yeah, even Bromley, I remember growing up, suburbs. I don't know if you can relate to them, but suburbs can be just as soul killing as living in poverty. What did somebody call Bromley in the 50s? A lobotomy with a haircut.
Yeah.
And David was, his soul was being crushed. All the things plus living in the suburbs.
And that's a bit the suburbs in England, whether it's the same in the States, I don't know. But so in England, they've always been a driver for creativity. It's always been
escape.
a place, a place that because people don't want to be there, they come up with all sorts of fantastical ways of escaping it. So yeah, absolutely, yeah, the hurt, the pain, was fundamental to it, which and I don't want to romanticize any of those things either, because you can end up saying, it was all worth it. It's just genuine hurt, and that's something that absolutely I was really keen with the book. When you get to the mid-70s and those extraordinary stories about seeing Satan in a swimming pool and all of those sorts of things, which sound quite funny. They sound sort of like Spinal Tap or something. They sound outrageous, they sound daft or whatever. But if you think of them just from his perspective, how terrifying, how sad and how lonely to feel like Satan's whole army was trying to get you, and Rox and Jimmy Page was trying to get you, and all of that. And it sounds ridiculous, but just trying to enter his head and his mentality about that, it would have been so sad and so painful for him to feel all of that stuff. And you can completely see why then you get the escape, the spiritual escape, through his appeal to God, through appeal to Christianity, you might say, on the song Word on a Wing especially, and then the escape to Europe after fleeing LA. So yeah, pain, escape, that dynamic absolutely works throughout his career, and did produce some extraordinary work as a result.
Oh, it certainly did for sure, and it's the old trope, guys. You have somebody poverty broken. They think that fame and fortune and all the girls is gonna fix their problems. Like, no, you don't address your trauma, it's not going anywhere. And with figures like what it doesn't matter, Elvis, David Bowie, Jim Morrison, it's almost the fame turns it into an 800-pound gorilla, into a monster, and that's what happened, and it breaks them, and some survive as some don't. Elvis didn't make it, David Bowie made it, Jim Morrison didn't, it's, yeah, take care of your trauma, kids. Go back, 'cause,
The lesson from all this.
and as you're right, yeah, as Kierkegaard said, life must be lived forward, but it's understood backward, right, Peter?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I was just gonna go back to something Sherilyn said as well, about the organic stuff, I'll just park that for a bit, I think. So carry on, Miguel. Sorry, I just need to cogitate on that a little more. But you.
Oh, no problem too. Yes, just looking at the chats. Yeah, we're definitely going to talk about Black Star at the end of this, because that's still the email I get the most. Somebody brought up, Roger Waters and the Wall. Of course, he was doing his own therapy, and as I write in my book, and this is my own little pet theory, but the character Pink is not Roger Waters. I say it's David Bowie, because it's the same trope, but Pink becomes this fascist dictator. And that's more in line with David, because David was a pro-fascist Hitler guy, occult magic in the 70s, thin and sickly. So, and there is one tour, in his Isolate tour, David walks out on stage and he does this to the audience. And I'm like, whoa, that's from The Wall. My little kind of fun pet theory.
That's a lovely spot. That's a great
Roger
spot.
Waters would deny it, of course, but
yeah. I'm sure. Just on, so I think I've worked through what I was going to say about what Sherilyn was asking. In terms of where this goes next, where the next person or the next singular figure comes from, I think they're absolutely. I think you could say that the works that Bowie has inspired. I'm not saying that my book is going to change the world in this way or anything or whatever, but I think there's something generative about the sort of works that Bowie and Elvis have created, and the sort of inspiration that they leave with you, whereby it makes you want to create, and it makes you want to produce, and it makes you want to share something of what you've had from them with the world, even it's sort of refracted through you in some way. You want to. I'm a Christian, right? But I'm a far better evangelist for David Bowie than I ever have been for Jesus. Right? I'm far more keen to tell people about Bowie. So it's and I think through that, I think that's how maybe their, whatever you want to call it, their spirit lives on, or there's more Bowie or there's more Elvis created as a result, if that makes any kind of sense. There's a constant regeneration of them in that way, I think.
I hope so. I mean, obviously, modern time, Harry Styles is very much influenced by Bowie. Of course, Elvis, you see in a lot of people, Lana Del Rey and others. So they're still influencing and opening channels of perception of talent, of success when you tap into those forces. They're certainly very dangerous. Even grunge. I mean, people don't know that grunge started out by this band called Mother Love Bone in Seattle. It struck a chord in that city, and everybody was goo gaga over Mother Love Bone. Guess what? They were a glam rock band, believe it or not. But then the singer died, and some members went to Pearl Jam and whatever. But then that transformed into grunge. So even Bowie is, you could say, the godfather of grunge in a way. And of course, you have the Nirvana famous cover of The Man Who Sold the World, which is a brilliant cover of a brilliant song. So it is there. Anything else from you, Sherilyn, or what do you think?
Well, it just occurs to me that a couple of things. One is this idea of the suburb as a prison, and really as a metaphor for our sort of denuded, deracinated spiritual lives as a prison. You know, the suburb being the apex of Western culture in the sense of safe, secure, affluent, in the sense of you have everything you need. If you've ever lived or worked in a third world country, you know that even, you know, very poor people in England and America are very wealthy, you know, are very well off. They're safe, secure. They're not in war zones. They have food and water. And so it's being sort of this apex of what the West has been trying to build, you know, this, you're safe and you're secure, and now you're locked down in a prison. And so I'm thinking of the opening scene of Time Bandits, and the closing scene where Terry Gilliam pans in and then pans out of the suburb, and it's a grid. It's a lockdown grid, you know. But then also in that film where you can see this parallel. So, you know, Bowie's journey being sort of an initiation writ large that we all get to kind of follow along and do with him, or he does for us, because we're living some of our lives just in this sort of vicarious projection. But, you know, in the film where Kevin takes on all these different roles through all his different time, you know, and that's what Bowie did, take on all these different roles. And it's one of these really missing factors in our culture, that we don't have rites of initiation. We don't have that intentionally traumatic experience that is dangerous. And sometimes people do die, but you come out of it a different person, knowing that you can survive trauma and you have the tools to do so. And you can change your culture. You can change your community. We don't have that, you know. And now one of my reasons for asking about the organic nature of Bowie and Elvis and these figures, as these sort of very public trickster figures, is that we don't even really have that now. We don't even really have, you know, talented, creative, transformative tricksters that we can even live vicariously through, you know. And I think, as inadequate as that is in the long run, I mean, you have, as you are both saying, you have to do your own work because you're going to take it with you wherever you go. But now people don't even have that, you know. I seem to have whatever's on their little box, not to disparage the box, we're on it now, but it was a dangerous place before, where people are just living vicariously in their little lockdown safe prisons, you know, how much more so now. But again, that time of chaos and uncertainty, you know, I mean, new things are going to come out of this, because people can't live like this forever, in my humble but I think accurate opinion.
Yeah. I think the last one might have been Prince, the last sort of Bowie, Elvis
Definitely. I
trickster,
thought Prince,
multi-talented, multimedia genius, doesn't care. And obviously he kind of dropped out of the music scene because he was rightly so pissed off at the record. And he honored Bowie in a concert, and then he himself passed in 2016 tragically. So yeah, that might be it. What do you think, Peter?
Yeah, I'm with you on Prince, certainly. The a couple of things. The suburbs thing actually also reminded me. We were talking earlier about David Lynch.
Another master.
There's another one there. So thinking of Blue Velvet, and Twin Peaks. Both deal with that, and are very aware of the severed ear under the, you know, by the picket fence, you know. So
not a turtle.
So yeah, that's yeah, suburb as site of safety, but of trauma as well. And I suppose Cal MacLachlan's character in Blue Velvet has to undergo a sort of trauma in order to, or a sort of rite of passage, you might say, in order to come out whole, I suppose, or healed in some way. So that's very interesting. Yeah, I was sorry, just trying to remember the other section. There is, I think, I'll just pause there. I think I'll just, because I again probably need to think things through a bit.
Yeah, of course, and you can always loop back. We're all doing this,
Mhm.
especially when it's dynamic and that trickster energy's here. Well, obviously, in keeping in theme of the show and what I do for the audience, he has a great Peter has a great chapter on Gnosticism. You can read it, and you're going to get Gnosticism and even more. And obviously, or as I argue in my book, well, as David says, as Peter says, David was very consciously embracing Gnosticism in the 80s, 90s, and so forth. From, like you said, modern love, his idea of bypassing church. He was reading Elaine Pagels and Harold Bloom. He was, he was the first in line to buy the Red Book when it came out in 2009 in New York. He was consciously, and I argue before, it was unconscious. William Burroughs, and he was into Jung, Tibetan Buddhism, even 2001: A Space Odyssey. It's been decoded as an ascension story. Stanley Kubrick himself said, no, it's not a science fiction movie. It's a movie about apotheosis. It's a Neoplatonic Gnostic, but he was unconscious. So that was always in the background with David, as were other things. But as you write, and please let me quote it, oh, and of course, God is an American, or I'm Afraid of Americans might be his other great Gnostic song. But as you write, Gnosticism maps remarkably well onto what we know of Bowie's belief and predilections. The Gnostic concept of the demiurge, the malevolent creator whom Orthodox beliefs mistakenly call God, has a parallel in Bowie's evil messiah figures, who purport to be something they are not, who are worshipped as something they are not, and who mask the truth. Gnosticism carries a sense of secret history, the kind of thing Bowie had lapped up since his youth. Gnosticism has aspects of religion, but is not itself a religion. Very true. Like Bowie, it is spiritual, not religious. It is Christianity's enigmatic half-brother. Like Bowie, Jesus is in there, but so too is much else. Bowie adored the hidden and the scrappy, the cultish and the eccentric, and here again, Gnosticism surely held much appeal. So, excellent quote. I don't know if you want to say anything else about it, Peter, since you wrote it. I mean, you don't have to say anything else. You can say,
Thank
read
you
the
very
damn
much
book.
for reading it out. Yeah, the more it's one of the something that kept happening when I was writing the book. The more I wrote, the more I realized there was to write, and the more I read, the more there seemed to be. It's an astonishing thing. And so you read, I noted that Bowie had this interest in Gnosticism, and then when you start looking into it, it just makes all sorts of sense. It really does, in terms of his personality as much as anything else, as well as the beliefs, as well as and what that might do creatively for you. It just make it absolutely fits. And in a way, sometimes you can be a bit sort of concerned when things fit quite so well, because you think, hang on a minute, that's a little bit too neat. But then I guess the thing about Gnosticism is that it isn't neat in itself. So it does kind of fit past that test as well. So yeah, it's I was so fascinated with all that. The historical element of Bowie's interest in Christianity, how that relates to Gnosticism in itself as well. So there's so much that subversive sort of energy, that playful energy, that questioning, all of that I think you get through Gnosticism, or radiates from it. I think that was he had such an affinity with that.
Yeah, I think it's almost, you can't separate them. And yeah, Gnosticism and David Bowie are the same. They're very enigmatic, even after all these years, Peter. It's so hard. It's like jazz or the blues. You have to feel it. You can't describe it, because it'll slip through your fingers and you'll end up with a version that's safe for you, as we all approach David Bowie, but it's all there. I mean, even here's an example. I talked to a scholar a couple of days ago on the podcast, but you look at the man who fell to earth. That is so Gnostic, and it's so based on the Hymn of the Pearl, this ancient Gnostic text. So you have Hymn of the Pearl, the man who fell to earth, and of course, Newton is a very Christ figure.
Mhm.
But then you have Philip K. Dick became obsessed with that movie. He would go and watch it again. He thought there were subliminal messages, and that inspired him to write his great Gnostic treatise, Valis. And David Bowie appears in Valis, as I forget the rock star in it. I forget his name, and so does Angie, and they're the parents of Sophia, the savior of the world. So there is this very interesting correlation or current that goes up, even all the way, as I argue, again, many ways to address it, even in Black Star. So
Yeah, I'm sure, and again, it just shows the depth and riches that there are to explore here. Absolutely. Just to go back, I think my head's finally worked out what it was going to say based
Sure.
on what Schiller just saying. I think, yeah, Bowie showed us things, but I think a really important thing was he invited us in as well. He welcomed us in, or he drew us in, he beckoned us in, and so we had to do a lot of the work. And I always find artists like that particularly interesting myself, that they don't put it all out front for you, where you are left to make connections yourself. And I think what a fantastic teacher that makes you, if you're Bowie or Elvis as well, I'm sure, or others, whereby you could see us fans as sort of students or pupils in a way, where we're making the connection and we're learning about, but fundamentally we're really learning about ourselves. And that's we're learning about art, and we're learning about architecture in Bowie's case, or whatever it may be. We're picking up these lyrics, these references to cinema, or these references to literature, or whatever it may be. But ultimately we're piecing together, you could say we're piecing together parts of ourselves with all this. And you could, I'm sure a psychologist would look at my book and see, oh, I'm trying to piece together my religious interests and my cultural interests or whatever. But
why not? We all do.
Well,
we all
I
have
guess,
bias.
I guess why not? But there, but absolutely, I think there's a sense that I think great artists, or certainly artists who I consider great, that's what they can do for you. They can show you things, but ultimately they show you, if it all goes well, they sort of show you yourself.
I think that's it. I think you hit it on the head. It's self-knowledge, or what they call gnosis. I think that's how I start the book. My book is, people always like, oh, he was drugs, and he said this, and he treated people badly, and a bad example, and all that. And there's a saying, I didn't like him because I knew him. I liked him because he helped me know myself. And that's what David Bowie, like you just said it, they are. As Schellen said, David Bowie could initiate himself into a different form, or different form of, consciousness and stage in life. And we've lost that today. And David is teaching us we can do that. We can initiate ourselves into the next stage of our life, or for better or worse. There's no guarantees. So
But
right,
one of the
Sherilyn?
things that occurred to me is that, reading your book, Miguel, Peter, I'm really looking forward to reading yours on
book.
Elvis, and yours on Bowie, and having read a few different biographies of Jung, and reading some autobiography or autobiographical accounts of T.E. Lawrence, and then John Mack's book about Lawrence, and seeing all these different facets of the same person. And you think, and judgments that people made about them. Well, you think they're great, but they did this. And you think, God forbid anybody ever write my biography. If somebody took a magnifying glass or a microscope into our own lives and to see the contradictions that we've all lived, you know, and the mistakes that we've all made. And maybe they had vastly greater resources, whether it was money or time or talent or whatever it was. But I mean, we're all like that. We're all very contradictory in our lives, and are all sort of groping to find the best way to be. I mean, there are a few just outright psychopath people, you know, that have done really horrible things, kind of from beginning to end. But you could also make, you know, arguments for what their purpose was. But all I'm saying is that it's really given me a great sort of, it's humbling, you know, when you start looking into somebody's life. And again, you all are saying that's what Bowie helped people to do by changing this sort of chameleon character to see you not only can you do put on all these different faces all the time, you know. And so to me, that's been humbling to read biographies of people that I've admired, and just hope nobody ever writes my biography.
Well, Sherilyn, I mean, Jung himself said, the bigger the light, the longer the shadow a person will cast. And we see that throughout history.
Absolutely. It's an eternal truth. It always is kind of surprising to me when people come out with these judgments. Oh, Bowie was just that. Oh, Jung was just a that. Oh, Elvis was just a this. And well, what are you a just a? You know? I mean,
yeah, show us your hits. Show us how you changed culture and made people and saved people's lives and helped them.
Right.
You know, you're a therapy for millions of people, including us here. Right.
Mm-hmm. If you have attempted, you know, when you the extent or the vast nature of what these people attempted and achieved, you know, yeah, they're going to be a lot bigger mistakes and a lot darker shadows, of course. But yeah, I'm really grateful that both of you all have brought this other aspect of their stories to people to kind of flesh that character out. I'm always amazed at how so many people who are music fans have no inkling of this side of these musicians that they really say that they love. That's always kind of fascinated me, you know, whether it's Elvis or, you know, our friend Chris Knowles with Elizabeth Fraser and Cocteau Twins, you know.
Yeah.
There's just these huge facets that are undeniably spiritual or revelatory of what's really going on. And it's always fascinated me that so many people will just, they could be listening to this for 40 years.
I know. And
so I want to hear your experience of, tell me what is percentage wise. I mean, because you had to have interviewed people and talked to people that, you know, were close or around in some way. Did most people not really understand what he was doing? I'd love to hear about Elvis and Bowie, but Peter, what?
Well, you think it's probably what? Projection and also manufacturing. I'm sure you agree, Peter. It's you know, we want a safe image of our heroes, but also the record companies shove down our throats what they want.
Thanks for mentioning Elizabeth Fraser, by the way. That's a brilliant. I think about her a lot. I can't imagine how you can listen. I was listening to Cocteau Twins earlier, and I can't imagine how you can listen to her sing and not think that there's something going on there, right? I mean,
she's hitting some different worlds, right?
Yeah, I mean, by me. So yeah, I think some people, I think there's a degree to which people bring themselves to all these artists as well, and they see. You know, and we all do, obviously. We can see what we want to see. I think some people, certainly in Britain, I know culturally perhaps different from America, but there can be a real resistance to religion in Britain in certain ways, and a real sort of cringe factor, you could call it, a real kind of embarrassment that kicks in. And so when Bowie got down on his knees at Wembley Stadium in 1992 and said the Lord's Prayer, although you know, the stadium responded reverentially, the press didn't, and a lot of the public didn't. They just thought, what on earth is he doing? How embarrassing! This is I can't watch this. This is ridiculous. So I think I think even though to me it's obvious that it was always there with Bowie, the religious spiritual stuff. To some people, they don't want it to be there. And certainly if you come, perhaps again, it's a bit political, perhaps if you come from a more I don't know, a more secular atheist sort of like culture perspective, then you don't want Bowie to be like that because you want Bowie to be like you. So yeah, I can see, I get why people don't see it. Actually, the people I spoke to, and it's because I chose who I spoke to. So they were, they were fine with all of that stuff. But I'm sure, like, you can read you can read other biographies of people of Bowie where they speak to his musicians, and musicians don't, this doesn't come up at all for them. So yeah, I get why. I can see why you might not see that in Bowie, but I think you're kind of missing a really fundamental thing if you can't see it.
Yeah, I mean, like, my book has been like a lead balloon with the mainstream Elvis fans. It's like blah 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 blah. I mean, they have circled the wagons. They do not want to hear about how he was into theosophy, Manly P. Hall, Kabbalah, Buddha. Very much he read the Gnostic Gospels like David, but they do not want to see that part. And even Elvis would go to his aunt and be like, look at all this Khalil Gibran, like David. What do you think? And his aunt would be like, if it ain't in the Bible, it ain't true. And even Elvis was like, even nobody's listening to me about my spirituality. So it's
that's really interesting. Just in terms of the critical responses to my book, you can tell the critics who are open to this stuff and the critics aren't at all. So I've just had a lovely review in The Guardian by a chap called Simon Critchley, who's great philosopher, English philosopher,
yeah, I know.
and mystic.
Yeah.
And so he absolutely gets this. But there are other critics who just come from this utterly sort of closed off point. Well, to my mind, it sounds closed off, and they just don't want to see it. And so that's so yeah, it's a really interesting point, I think.
Yeah, well, same as it ever was. And well, as we get to the top of the hour, we of course have to mention Black Star. Somebody mentioned rightly, Black Star is a song by Elvis, and he says famously, every man who sees the black star, his time has come. I think that's what one of the symbols he was using, because Elvis was so important in David's life. Little Richard and Elvis were his like two pillars but probably even more Elvis. But tell the audience briefly how you approach Black Star in your book, Peter.
Yeah, it's often gets, well, and understandably so, people associate it entirely with Bowie's death, and people think of it as his deliberate act of farewell, or deliberate piece of death art, you could say. I think that the truth is a bit more complex than that. I think although he knew he was, he knew he was ill, he didn't entirely know he was going to die until basically he was filming the video for Lazarus, the song. But he made it as if it was his last record, and that's the crucial thing. He made it as if he was that was going to be it, and that's, I think, to me, why it's so full of life, so full of now, so full of the present, and so full of that sort of vitality, that kind of life force. And yeah, the imagery around it is draws in it's like it's bringing together everything that he ever was. And so the video for Black Star has this arcane ritual. It has these scarecrow figures being crucified. It has Major Tom in there, who is this sort of spiritual weird figure for Bowie. It has everything in it. It was as if he was bringing it all together. And the video for Lazarus has Bowie also. There's a famous shot of him in bed with the bandages, but there's also cuts to a scene where he's wearing the same clothes he wore in his Kabbalah era. Very deliberate callback. So it's as if, as well as bringing together all of the energy and a lot of his songwriting passions, a lot of his musical inspirations, Black Star. Also, the imagery around it, including the Black Star itself, being going back to his time with, as an aficionado with Dion Fortune, and and the Black Star as a symbol of spiritual protection. There's just so much, and yeah, it's as if everything I write about in the book is bundled up and sort of shoved, concentrated fashion into that last great work.
It really is. It's something else. Yeah, I have of course, my own take and angle to it. So you'll have to wait for that. I see it as a Gnostic ritual. And again, this is not, I draw from other scholars, actually academics who make the case. And I end up, my book ends up with David. I have this vision where I meet David on a ring of Saturn and we have a conversation, in the same room in 2001. Where the movie ends, and I have a chat with David, and he says, "Look, our work is not done. Humanity's work is not done." But that's me going to some weird places. But yeah, more to come. But Peter's book, of course, does an excellent job with the album, with the imagery and everything else. You should definitely check it out. As we get to the end, Sherilyn, any last question or comment from thee?
Oh, just thank you so much, Peter. It was really enlightening, and I'm looking forward to seeing your perspective of Bowie. I've really, as I mentioned before, I really am enjoying reading biographies side by side, and fleshing out pictures of these people who were so courageous in their willingness to take on this journey, to embrace that trickster archetype and show us a little bit of the way, of how we initiate ourselves. So thanks so much. It's been awesome.
Thank you. Thanks so much. That's very kind, Sherilyn.
Yes. Yeah, definitely check it out. So Peter, besides getting your book at the usual suspects, is there any website you want to send individuals?
Send them to my Substack, which you've been a wonderful supporter of. I'm sort of restarted it to make it more of a companion to the book. It was where the book started. It was where I started writing my thoughts and all this, and those developed into the book. So those pieces are now not on their website. They've all been developed and they can be found in expanded and far greater developed form in the book. But the Substack is, I want to develop it into a companion piece with some sort of Bowie apocrypha there. I think stuff that you might not find, stuff that an editor wouldn't perhaps think it merits a place in the book, or there isn't firm evidence for, but is worth exploring in its own way.
Or like his letters recently that were found. You're like, well, I'm not going to make my book. I'll put it on my blog.
Absolutely. So and that's Bowie God, one word, Substack. So thank you for raising that. Thank you.
Yeah, definitely subscribe. He has a beautiful, touching article on when David Lynch died. Talk about another figure that reality is not going to be the same. Your critique of Moon Age Daydream, I think, was spot on. Good writing. Check it out,
Thank
people.
you very much.
So, and somebody asked my book. It's going to be fall 2026. If there's still a world, you'll see it. If the Starman decides, if he chooses for this universe to continue, it'll be at the end of this year. I'm actually finishing the edits, and you know how much fun that is, Peter. You know how much fun is when the editor says, "You're quoting too many lyrics. You got to cut that." You went through the same thing.
Tell me about that. Blimey, yeah.
Because you can only use 30% of.
It's better without lyrics. When I cut the lyrics, it was.
Yeah, it is better because I thought the lyrics. Sometimes we get lazy. We want to lean on the lyrics. Like, here's his lyrics, and this makes us think.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Well, we are at the end of this Moon Age Daydream. Sherilyn, thanks for keeping us company. Always enjoy it.
Thanks, Miguel. Yeah, you can find my stuff on my Substack as well, Dr. Sherilyn H.T. Jones at Substack. And Peter, I'll definitely check yours out. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I'll check yours out too.
Yeah. Check out our presentations are top notch on the hero archetype and so for the warrior archetype. Mamma mia. But anyway, Peter, thank you very much for coming on the show. Really enjoyed it, and good luck with everything.
Thank you so much, and good luck with all of your wonderful works too.
Appreciate it. Thank you. And for the audience who is here, yeah, please support AM Byte. Glad you enjoyed it. And we've got great content coming out next week, special shows and special content. Until then, yeah, what can I say? May God's love be with you.